I'll never forget the day my son's fiancée, Sara, asked me to sell my late husband's watch. It wasn't because I hadn't seen her act a little entitled before, but because this request was different. It wasn't just a watch. It was a piece of our family's history, something irreplaceable, something that tied me back to my husband, who had passed away 5 years ago. That watch was everything to me. A token of his love, his sacrifice, his life. He wore it every day for over 30 years, and when he passed, it was all I had left to remind me of the man who had been my rock. But on that particular afternoon, sitting at my dining table with my son Alex and his fiancée, Sara, things shifted in a way I could never have anticipated. I remember it so clearly. It was a warm, late spring day. The kind of afternoon when the sunlight filters through the trees outside, creating dappled patterns on the hardwood floors. I had spent hours preparing the meal. Alex always loved my chicken pot pie, and I had made sure to use the recipe his father had loved so much. It felt like any other Sunday. Family time. A peaceful, cherished moment. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. Alex and Sara were engaged, planning their wedding for later that year. At first, I was thrilled for them. Alex was my only son, and I wanted him to be happy. Sara, for all her quirks, seemed like a good fit. She was charming, well-spoken, and affectionate toward me. She had always been so polite, so respectful, or so I thought. We ate, we laughed, and we shared the usual family banter. But it was when we moved into the living room for dessert that things took an unexpected turn. Sara, always one for small talk, began asking me about my husband. I wasn't surprised. She'd asked about him before, and I was always happy to share memories of the man I had spent the better part of my life with. But this time, her questions felt a little different. "Do you still have Dad's watch?" she asked, glancing toward the mantelpiece where it sat today. I nodded, my heart tightening a little at the mention of it. "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "I keep it there to remind me of him. It's all I have left." She walked over to the mantel, almost casually, and picked up the watch. "It's such a beautiful piece," she said, examining it. "I've heard it's worth a lot. Does it mean a lot to you?" I could feel the tension in the room shift, but I didn't know why. I told her before how much it meant to me, how I had hoped to pass it down to Alex one day. It wasn't just valuable, it was priceless to me. "Yes, it does. It's more than money," I said softly, trying to redirect the conversation. I didn't want to make her uncomfortable, but I couldn't deny that something about her holding the watch made me uneasy. Sara seemed to pause for a moment, staring at the watch in her hands. Then she set it down on the table and turned to Alex with a little too much enthusiasm. "You know," she said, almost in a sing-song voice, "I was thinking, maybe you could sell it? It's worth a lot of money, and you could really do something with that kind of cash." I blinked. Was she serious? I thought maybe I'd misheard her. "Sell it?" I repeated, my voice shaky. "Why would I sell it? It's a keepsake, Sara. It's not for sale." She shrugged, unfazed. "Well, it could be. It's just sitting there. It's not like it has any sentimental value to you, right? I mean, he's been gone for years, and you're just keeping it for what? A memory." I felt the blood rush to my face. My husband's watch was a memory, yes, but it was also a testament to everything we had built together. How could she stand there and be so flippant about something so sacred to me? "It's not like that," I said, my voice rising slightly. "It means more to me than you'll ever understand." Sara's expression didn't change. She didn't seem offended, but there was a coolness to her tone that made my stomach churn. "Look, I'm just saying, you could sell it. It's worth, what? $300,000. That's a lot of money. We could really use it. My brother has been trying to start his own business, and this could help him. You wouldn't even miss it." I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. My mind reeled. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't want to believe what I was hearing, but the words were sinking in. She wasn't asking. She wasn't even hinting. She was demanding. I looked at Alex, my son, searching his face for any sign that this wasn't happening. But he just sat there, quietly, his hands folded in front of him. I couldn't read his expression. He wasn't arguing. He wasn't defending me. He just watched. The silence between us felt suffocating. Sara, that's not how this works, I said, my voice growing more firm. This watch stays with me. It's mine. It's a part of our family's history. I'm not selling it. It's not for sale. Sara didn't respond right away. She just stood there, looking at the watch. For a moment, I thought she might back off, but then she spoke again, her tone now colder. You're being unreasonable, she said, her voice sharp. It's just a piece of jewelry, and it's sitting there collecting dust. You're holding onto it like it's some kind of sacred relic, but it's not. It's a watch, and we need that money. We've been struggling, and you don't even realize how much we could do with it. I sat there in stunned silence. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't be serious. This wasn't about a watch. This was about something deeper, something more personal. I'm not selling it, Sara, I said quietly, but firmly. This is non-negotiable. There was a long pause, and then, to my surprise, Alex spoke. Mom, I think she's right. The words hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe. I looked at him, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. What did you say? I asked, my voice breaking. I think she's right, Mom, Alex repeated, his voice soft but resolute. You've had that watch for years. It's just sitting there. You're not going to wear it. Maybe we could sell it, help out Sara's family. It could make a difference. I felt like the room was spinning. My own son, my flesh and blood, was agreeing with her. It was like the ground had been pulled out from under me. The one person who should have been standing by me, protecting our family's legacy, was turning his back on me. The betrayal stung more than I could put into words. And it wasn't just Sara's greed, it was Alex's indifference. How could he not see what this meant to me? How could he even entertain the idea? I wanted to shout, to argue, to tell them both how wrong they were, but instead, I just sat there, frozen. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at either of them. My mind raced, but nothing seemed to make sense. Sara's face softened, but it wasn't a look of understanding. It was the look of someone who had already won. You're not being fair, Mom, she said gently. This is about helping family. What's the harm? And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about helping family. This was about Sara getting what she wanted, no matter the cost. For years, my life had been simple. After my husband, Tom, passed away, I lived quietly in the home we'd built together, surrounded by the things we had accumulated over our lifetime. The kitchen, where I spent most of my days, still smelled faintly of his favorite meals. The smell of fresh bread, a pot roast slowly simmering, the smell of his cologne lingering in the air when he would hug me goodbye in the mornings. Our house wasn't just a structure, it was a living, breathing memory of the life we had shared. Every corner of that place held echoes of laughter, of conversations, of dreams. And the watch, my husband's watch, was a symbol of all of it. The watch wasn't just a family heirloom. It was a testament to the years of love and devotion that Tom had put into our marriage, into our family. It had been a gift from me to him on our 10th wedding anniversary, a symbol of how far we had come together. The fact that it was worth so much money, well, that was a side note. It wasn't about the price. It was about what it represented. But in the months following Tom's passing, I found myself alone, surrounded by the quiet, almost unbearable silence that settled over the house. It was hard at first, learning how to be by myself after all those years of companionship. My son, Alex, would visit often, checking on me, trying to make sure I was okay. And I was proud of the life I had built with Tom. I had a lifetime of memories to keep me company, but there was a loneliness that was impossible to ignore. That's when I met Sara. She was sweet at first, a little over-enthusiastic about wedding plans, but in a way that was endearing. She seemed to fit into our family effortlessly. Alex was clearly in love with her, and I couldn't help but feel a warmth in my heart watching the two of them together. Sara had a way of making everything seem brighter. She was full of energy, always talking about their future, the house they were going to buy, the children they would have. I wanted to believe that this was the life Alex was meant to have. And yet, there was something about her that always felt a little off. Something in the way she would glance at certain things, especially when she thought I wasn't looking. She had a habit of touching things that didn't belong to her, like my husband's old photographs or the antiques we had collected. I didn't mind her curiosity, but it wasn't curiosity that bothered me. It was something else. It was the way she seemed to look at my belongings like they were just things to be discarded, to be sold for profit. But I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, Sara was young, and maybe she just didn't understand the sentimental value of the things in this house. I had to remind myself that she hadn't grown up in the same way I had. I didn't hold it against her, not at first. As the months passed, I watched as Alex and Sara's relationship deepened. They were making wedding plans, picking out venues, and even started talking about starting a family. It should have been a time of joy, and for the most part, it was. But something was shifting. It wasn't just in Sara's behavior. It was in Alex, too. The Alex I knew had always been considerate, kind, and respectful. He was the kind of person who would go out of his way to make sure you felt comfortable. But over the past few months, I'd noticed a subtle change. There was a distance between us, a coolness that I hadn't seen before. At first, I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But little by little, I began to see it. He was siding with Sara more and more. If I disagreed with her on something, he would stay silent, or worse, he would take her side. If I said no to one of her ideas, he'd try to convince me to reconsider. I couldn't help but wonder if it was because he didn't want to rock the boat, or if he simply didn't value my opinion as much as he used to. I tried to talk to him about it once, but the conversation ended quickly. "Mom, you're just being too sensitive," he had said. "Sara's just excited about the future, and she wants the best for both of us. You should try to understand her more." I remember feeling a sharp pang in my chest when he said that. Understand her more. I'd known Sara for less than a year. I'd spent decades with Alex. Was I supposed to just ignore the red flags I had been seeing? I didn't want to come across as overbearing or controlling, but my instincts were telling me something wasn't right. That's when the watch first came up. I remember it as if it were yesterday. We were sitting in the living room after dinner, just talking, when Sara casually mentioned how valuable the watch must be. She had been eyeing it again. I told myself it was just curiosity, that she was simply making conversation. But as time went on, I began to notice more than just casual interest. She asked if I ever thought about selling it, about how much money we could make if I sold it. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think too much of it at the time. And then came that fateful day, the day she demanded I sell it. The day she made it clear that it wasn't about the watch. It wasn't even about money. It was about control. "I'm not selling it, Sara," I had said, shaking my head in disbelief. "It's not for sale. It's not about money." But she didn't back down. "It's just a watch, Mom," she said, almost condescendingly. "It's not like it's anything that important. You could use the money. It's worth a lot, you know. We could help my brother with it." That's when I realized what was really going on. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't being kind. She wasn't showing any understanding of what the watch meant to me. She saw it as an object to be sold for her benefit, for her brother's benefit. She saw it as something she could use to manipulate me, to make me feel like I owed her something. And then, to my shock, Alex chimed in, agreeing with her. "Mom, maybe we should sell it. It's worth a lot. It could help them." The betrayal I felt in that moment was almost too much to bear. My own son, the person I thought would stand by me no matter what, was siding with her. It wasn't just about the watch. It wasn't just about money. It was about something much deeper. It was about their belief that they could take whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted it. I tried to keep my composure, but my heart was breaking. "I'm not selling it," I said, more firmly this time. "It's not just a watch. It's a memory. It's everything I have left of your father." But Sara didn't back down. She didn't even flinch. "Well, then I guess you'll just be keeping it all to yourself," she said. And that was when I knew that this wasn't just a disagreement. This was something much more dangerous. It wasn't just about a watch. It was about respect. It was about love. And it was about a family that was falling apart before my eyes. The days after that conversation felt like a blur. I could hardly focus on anything other than the weight of what had been said. What had started as a casual mention of the watch now loomed over me like a shadow, growing larger with every passing moment. I couldn't stop thinking about what Sara had said, or what Alex had agreed with. It was more than a request to sell an old family heirloom. It was a glimpse into something far darker, something I wasn't sure I was ready to confront. That Sunday after dinner, I found myself pacing around the living room, unable to shake the tension. My thoughts kept circling back to Sara's words, "It's just a watch. It's not that important." But to me, it was everything. It wasn't about the value. It was about what it represented. My life with Tom, the memories we had built, the love we'd shared. How could anyone see it as just an object to be traded for money? It wasn't just a possession. It was a part of who I was. Alex hadn't brought it up again, and for that, I was grateful. But something in the back of my mind told me that this wasn't over. I couldn't shake the feeling that Sara hadn't given up on her plan. And yet, I tried to push the thoughts aside. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was reading too much into it. After all, it had been a week, and they hadn't said a word about the watch since that fateful dinner. But then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Alex. I hadn't expected it, not after the way he had distanced himself from me in the last few months. But I was still relieved to hear his voice on the other end of the line. Maybe things were going to get better. Maybe we could talk. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice sounding different, almost hesitant. "Can I come by? I need to talk to you about something." "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, trying to sound casual, but my stomach twisted. I didn't know why, but I had a sinking feeling that I wasn't going to like what was coming. When Alex arrived, he didn't come in with his usual smile. Instead, his face was serious, his eyes tired. There was an odd tension in the air, and for a moment I wondered if he had come to apologize for the way things had unfolded. But as soon as he spoke, I realized it was something much more complicated. "Mom, I've been thinking about what Sara said," he began, hesitating. He rubbed the back of his neck, something he did when he was nervous or uncomfortable. "And I think she's right." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. This was exactly what I had feared. "I think it's time for you to let go of that watch," he continued. His words felt like they were coming from a stranger. "It's not just sitting there. It's not doing anyone any good." The room seemed to close in around me. My son, the one person I thought would understand the depth of my attachment to that watch, was now echoing Sara's sentiments. I felt my throat tighten as I struggled to find the right words. I wanted to scream, to tell him how wrong this was, but I couldn't. I didn't know how to react without making things worse. "I'm not going to sell it, Alex," I said, my voice trembling. "You know what that watch means to me. It's more than just a piece of jewelry. It's everything. Your father gave it to me, and it's all I have left of him." "I know, Mom," he said, his tone soft but firm. "But you have to think about the bigger picture here. Sara's brother is struggling. He needs the money, and we could really use it too. You don't need the watch anymore. It's just sitting there, collecting dust." That phrase again, just sitting there. Every time I heard it, it felt like a slap across the face. To them, it was just an object. To me, it was a lifeline. "I'm not selling it," I repeated, my voice more insistent this time. "You can't ask me to do that, Alex. Not for them. Not for anyone. This isn't about money. It's about respect." Alex looked away, clearly uncomfortable. "Mom, I get it, I do. But you're being stubborn. We're family, and Sara's family. We're trying to help them." I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't just about the watch anymore. It was about Sara getting what she wanted. She had poisoned his mind, and he didn't even realize it. He wasn't just siding with her because of the money. He was siding with her because he was afraid of losing her, of causing any conflict. And that hurt more than anything else. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I wasn't going to let them take what was mine. I wasn't going to let Sara manipulate me, and I wasn't going to let Alex be dragged into it. But the more I tried to assert myself, the more I realized that something inside of me was starting to crack. I didn't want to lose Alex, but I also couldn't let this go. Not without a fight. I'm not selling it, I said, my voice quieter now, but more resolute. And I don't want to hear about it again. Alex stood there, looking at me with a mixture of frustration and guilt. He didn't say anything for a long time. The silence between us felt heavier than it ever had before. It was like we were two strangers standing in the same room, both unwilling to back down. I'm sorry you feel that way, he said finally, his voice strained. But I think you're being unreasonable. And with that, he turned and walked out of the door, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces. I could still feel the weight of the conversation hanging in the air, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't just the watch that was being torn away from me. It was my relationship with my son, too. I didn't know how we had gotten here, how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Sara or anyone else take what was rightfully mine. Not without a fight. The days that followed that conversation felt like an emotional tug-of-war. I couldn't escape the feeling that everything was unraveling, slowly, but surely. The house, once a sanctuary filled with memories, now felt like a battleground. Each room reminded me of a different moment in time. The kitchen where Tom and I spent our evenings talking about everything and nothing. The study where we'd plan our future, our children's future. Now, all I could hear was the echo of Sara's voice, asking me to sell my late husband's watch. At first, I tried to avoid thinking about it. I told myself that maybe this was just a phase. Alex was young, impressionable, and probably just trying to make Sara happy. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that Sara wasn't just being practical. She was being manipulative, and Alex, my own son, was being dragged along with her. I couldn't understand it. Alex and I had always been close. Since the day he was born, he was my world. We had been through so much together. His childhood, his teenage years, his father's illness, and then his death. I had been there for him through it all. How could he suddenly turn on me like this? How could he side with someone who so clearly didn't understand the value of family, of memories? I tried to reach out to him after that conversation, but every time I called or sent a text, he would either avoid me or give me some vague excuse. I felt like I was losing him bit by bit, and it terrified me. The woman he was supposed to marry was already making demands, and he was going along with it. Weiss, he wasn't even seeing how wrong it was. It wasn't until I had a chance to speak with my old friend, Margaret, that I started to put the pieces together. Margaret had known Tom for years. She was like a second mother to him, and in many ways, she had been a lifeline to me after Tom passed away. She understood how much the watch meant to me. She had been there when Tom gave it to me, and she had always admired it. So, when I confided in her about what had happened with Sara and Alex, I needed her to understand. I can't believe it, I said, feeling my throat tighten with emotion as I recounted the conversation. Sara actually asked me to sell the watch. And Alex, he just agreed with her. Margaret sat across from me at the kitchen table, her face lined with concern. She had been quiet while I spoke, letting me get everything out. When I finished, she didn't say anything for a long while. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with a kind of sad understanding. I've been meaning to tell you something, Rose, Margaret said quietly. I've heard some things about Sara. Some things you might not know. I felt my heart skip a beat. What do you mean? What kind of things? Margaret paused, her eyes flickering to the window as though she was searching for the right words. I don't want to make you feel like I'm gossiping, but you need to know. I've heard Sara talk about her brother and the way she's been going on about him. Well, it doesn't sit right with me. What do you mean? I asked, my voice tightening with worry. I've never heard her mention him much. Margaret leaned in closer, her voice dropping lower, as though she didn't want anyone else to hear. Sara's brother, Jake, has been in trouble for years. I don't know the full story, but I've heard he's been struggling with debt, with addiction, and has been asking Sara for money. A lot of money. She's been trying to get her hands on anything she can, and I'm afraid your husband's watch is just part of the plan. My blood ran cold. I could hardly process the words that were coming out of Margaret's mouth. I had always known Sara's brother was in the picture, but I hadn't known anything about him being in trouble. I didn't know about the debts, the addictions, or the pressure Sara was under to help him. And now, everything began to make sense. The watch wasn't just a symbol of greed for Sara, it was part of a much bigger scheme. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I asked, my voice trembling. Margaret gave me a soft, apologetic look. I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news, Rose, and I thought maybe you'd already suspected something wasn't right. But after hearing Sara talk about the watch the way she did, I thought you should know. I think this whole thing is about more than just the money. It's about control. And if you're not careful, Sara might be using Alex to get what she wants. I sat back in my chair, the weight of her words sinking in. This was more than just a young woman trying to make a good impression. Sara wasn't just looking for a way to help her brother. She was using her relationship with Alex to manipulate him into giving her exactly what she wanted. And I had a sinking feeling that if I didn't do something, if I didn't act soon, I was going to lose everything. My son, my legacy, my memories of Tom. That evening, after Margaret left, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the mantel where Tom's watch sat today. I had always thought that the watch would be something Alex would cherish one day. It was going to be his inheritance, the one thing left of his father's. I had always assumed that the value of the watch, both monetary and emotional, would be something Alex would understand. But now, it felt like the watch wasn't just something to hold onto. It was the last thread that kept me connected to my family, and Sara was trying to take it from me. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let her manipulate Alex any longer. I spent the next few days doing what I should have done from the start. I began gathering evidence. I reached out to some of Tom's old friends, asking them about the watch's value, the history behind it. I spoke to a few people who had known Sara before she met Alex, hoping to get some insight into her past, into her true nature. And bit by bit, I began to piece together a picture of a woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. But nothing prepared me for what came next. The discovery about Sara's brother, Jake, and her manipulative tactics changed everything. It was like a fog had lifted from my mind. All the uneasy feelings I'd been having suddenly clicked into place, and a cold, hard truth began to sink in. Sara wasn't just after the watch. She was after something far more valuable, control over Alex, over his future, and ultimately, over our family. I sat in the living room that night, staring at Tom's watch, feeling its weight more than ever before. It wasn't just a timepiece anymore. It was a battle, the last thing I had left to protect, the last shred of my family's integrity. And I wasn't about to let Sara take it from me, no matter what it cost. I had spent so many years putting my trust in people, believing that my son would always be there to stand by me. But now, I was starting to realize that trust had been misplaced. I loved Alex more than anything, but he was in deep, and Sara had a hold on him that I wasn't sure he could break free from. I spent hours pacing around the house, trying to think of what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Alex, to tell him exactly what I had learned about Sara and her brother, but I knew that would only push him further away. It wasn't about showing him how much I knew. It was about showing him how wrong this was, how deeply manipulative and selfish Sara had become. I needed a plan, a way to expose the truth without losing everything I loved in the process. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Confronting Sara head-on might cause an irreparable rift with Alex, but if I didn't act now, I risked losing not just the watch, but my relationship with my son. It was then that I remembered something. A conversation I had overheard at a family gathering months ago, when Sara wasn't paying attention. It was a throwaway comment, something I hadn't thought much of at the time, but now it felt like the key to everything. At the time, I had dismissed it, but now it made perfect sense. Sara had mentioned something about her brother's debt collectors and how she was willing to do whatever it took to help him. Those words echoed in my mind like a warning. If her brother was involved in something dangerous, something illegal, and if she was willing to go to such lengths to help him, maybe selling my husband's watch wasn't just a financial decision. Maybe it was a step in a much bigger game. I had to get to the bottom of it. I couldn't let my son be dragged into something he didn't fully understand. I couldn't let Sara pull the strings any longer. The next day, I decided to take action. I called a private investigator, someone I knew from an old acquaintance, and told him about Sara's brother and his financial troubles. I needed to know more about him, about the extent of his debts, his connections, anything that could help me understand why Sara was so desperate. The investigator promised to dig into it. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I had a feeling that once the truth came out, everything would change. I had to be prepared for whatever it was, even if it meant losing my son in the process. While I waited for the investigator's report, I decided to take another route, one that would give me a direct confrontation with Sara. If I was going to stop her, I needed to make her see the full consequences of her actions. She needed to understand that this wasn't just about a watch. It was about manipulating Alex and using his family for her own gain. It took a week for the investigator to get back to me. When I finally received his call, my stomach tightened. He had found something that was worse than I could have imagined. "Rose," he said, his voice low and serious. I dug into Jake's financial records. He's deep in with some dangerous people. I'm talking loan sharks, people who don't take kindly to being ignored. Your son's fiancée, Sara, has been helping him cover his debts for a while. She's been using her engagement to Alex as leverage to get money. The watch wasn't just a token, it was part of a bigger plan. She's been trying to manipulate Alex into liquidating assets for his brother. She's trying to pay off these debts, and the watch is the key. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking as I gripped the phone. I had known something was off, but hearing it from someone else, hearing the cold, hard truth, was a different kind of blow. I had to act fast. If Sara was willing to go this far, then I had no choice but to confront her directly. I decided to meet her at a local cafe, somewhere neutral, somewhere she wouldn't expect to be cornered. I knew Alex wouldn't come with me, and I didn't want him to be there for this. I needed to stand on my own 2 feet, to face Sara without any backup. This was my battle to fight. When I arrived, Sara was already sitting at a table by the window, her posture relaxed, as if she had no idea what was coming. She looked up when I walked in, offering me a warm, fake smile that made my skin crawl. "Rose, I wasn't expecting you," she said, her voice sugary sweet. "I hope I didn't interrupt anything." I sat down across from her, my gaze steady. "We need to talk, Sara, about the watch." Her eyes flickered for a moment, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Of course. What about it?" "You know what I'm talking about. The watch isn't for sale, and you need to understand that it never will be. It's not just an object, it's a part of our family's legacy. I don't care how much money it's worth or how much you think you need it. It's not yours to take." Sara's smile faded, and I saw the first crack in her armor. "Rose, you don't understand. This isn't about the watch. This is about helping family. You've been holding on to it for so long, and it's just collecting dust." I leaned in, my voice low but firm. "No, Sara, this is about you using my son for your own purposes. You've been manipulating him. And if you think you can just walk in here and take what's mine, you're wrong." Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw something cold in her expression. "You're making a mistake, Rose. I've been trying to help my family. You wouldn't understand." "I understand more than you think," I replied, my heart pounding. "I know about Jake, about the debts, about what you've been doing." Her face paled, and for a split second, I saw the fear in her eyes. But just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair over as she made a quick exit. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice sharp. "You'll regret this." I watched her leave, feeling the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders. I had done it. I had stood up for myself. But the fight was far from over. Sara was dangerous, and if I didn't protect Alex from her, I might lose him forever. The days after I confronted Sara felt like I was walking through a storm. My head was spinning with everything I had learned, the debts, the lies, the manipulation. The realization that Sara had been playing a long game with Alex, using him as a pawn in her scheme to save her brother, hit me like a freight train. But no matter how much I tried to wrap my head around it, one truth stood clear. Sara wasn't going to give up easily. I could feel the tension building with each passing day. After I confronted her at the cafe, Sara disappeared for a while. No calls, no texts. I half expected her to reach out, to try and convince me that she had done nothing wrong, to apologize even. But nothing came. It was like she had retreated, like a wounded animal retreating to its den. But I knew it wasn't over. This was just the calm before the storm. I spent the next few days going over every detail, every word, every action. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. The more I thought about Sara's behavior, the more I realized she wasn't just after the watch. She was after control of my son's future. She wanted him to be so tied up in her schemes, so dependent on her, that he would do anything to make her happy, even if it meant losing the values and respect that had always defined our family. I had been patient. I had tried to reason with Alex, tried to show him the truth. But now, the gloves were off. I had to stop being passive. I had to protect my family, my legacy, no matter what. The phone call came in the middle of the night. My heart leapt into my throat when I saw Alex's name on the screen. I hadn't heard from him since the confrontation with Sara, and I had no idea what to expect. Was he finally going to see the light? Would he be angry with me for exposing Sara's secrets? I answered immediately, not wanting to waste a moment. Alex. My voice was steady, but my pulse raced in my ears. Mom. His voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. I've been thinking a lot about what happened. And I need to see you. I could feel the weight of the words in his voice. This wasn't just a casual check-in. This was something important. I couldn't help but feel a rush of hope mixed with fear. Was he going to finally understand? Was he going to choose me, his mother, over Sara and her manipulation? I'm coming over now, he said, before hanging up abruptly. I didn't wait. I grabbed my coat and rushed out the door. My hands were shaking as I drove to his apartment. The only thing in my mind was that I had to prepare myself for whatever was coming. I had no idea how this would end, but I knew that I couldn't back down anymore. When I arrived, Alex was waiting for me outside, pacing on the front porch. His face was drawn, his eyes red as though he hadn't slept in days. The moment he saw me, he stepped forward, his shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world was on his back. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I've been an idiot. I could feel a lump form in my throat. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had wanted this. I had wanted him to see the truth. But now that it was happening, I wasn't sure how to process it. I just stood there for a second, taking in the rawness of his expression. Alex continued, his voice cracking. I should have listened to you. I should have seen it. But I was so blinded by everything Sara said. I never thought about what she was really doing. I thought she was just trying to help her family. But I was wrong. I didn't see how deep she was in it. And I didn't realize how much it was hurting you. I stepped forward, pulling him into a tight hug. Alex, I know you didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know you were trying to protect her, but Sara, she was using you, son. She was using us both. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I didn't want to believe it. I thought you were just being overprotective, but now I see. I see how manipulative she really is, and I hate myself for not seeing it sooner. I held him tighter, my heart breaking for him. My son had been caught in the middle of a mess he didn't ask for, a game he didn't understand. But it wasn't too late. We still had time to fix things, to rebuild what we had lost. I'm here, Alex. I'm always here for you, I said softly, running my hand through his hair. We'll get through this. Together. But even as I said the words, I knew the hardest part was still to come. The next few days were filled with difficult conversations, with Alex and me trying to pick up the pieces of our relationship, putting back together the trust that had been fractured. But even as we worked to rebuild, I knew Sara wouldn't just give up. She wasn't going to walk away quietly. The confrontation came sooner than I had expected. It was a cold, gray morning when Sara showed up at my doorstep. I had been waiting for this, but I wasn't prepared for the wave of emotions that hit me when I saw her standing there, looking at me with a mix of defiance and fury. "You think you've won, don't you?" she said, her voice low but sharp. "You think you've turned Alex against me. But you're wrong. I will do whatever it takes to get what I want. You'll never keep me from him. I'll make show of it." I looked at her, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of her threats or her anger. I was done being afraid. "No, Sara, this ends now," I said, my voice steady. "You've used Alex. You've manipulated him, and you've tried to tear apart my family. But I'm not going to let you do that anymore." She narrowed her eyes, her fists clenching at her sides. "You'll regret this," she spat. "You'll regret standing in my way." I took a deep breath, holding my ground. "I've already lost enough, Sara. But I won't lose Alex. Not to you." She glared at me for a long moment, her eyes filled with venom. Then, with a final look of hatred, she turned and stormed off, leaving me standing on the porch. I knew this wasn't the end, but I also knew that I had won the first battle. The days following my confrontation with Sara felt like a blur of emotions. My heart was heavy with relief, but there was also an unsettling weight that lingered. Sara's words, "You'll regret this," echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done. But despite her threats, despite everything that had happened, I was finally starting to feel a sense of peace again. I had reclaimed my family, or at least part of it. Alex was no longer blind to Sara's manipulation. He had come to me, admitted his mistakes, and together we began to rebuild the bond we had shared before all of this began. But I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust is fragile, and though Alex was beginning to understand the truth, the scars of the past few months were still fresh. I spent the next few days talking to him, trying to help him understand just how far Sara had been willing to go to control him, and, ultimately, to control us. He was hurting, guilty for not seeing what was so clear to me from the beginning. But I couldn't blame him. He had been in love, and love can cloud your judgment in ways that nothing else can. But we had a chance now, a chance to heal, to grow stronger together. One evening, as we sat together at the kitchen table, eating a quiet dinner, Alex looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "Mom," he said, his voice still raw from everything that had happened. "I don't know how I can make it right. I should have seen what Sara was doing, but I didn't. I feel like I've let you down." I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. "You didn't let me down, Alex. You just got caught up in something. We all do it at some point. But you came back. You saw the truth. That's all that matters." I could see the weight lifting off his shoulders, and I knew that, despite everything, we would get through this. But it wasn't just about the two of us anymore. It was about all of us, about family, and I was determined not to let Sara's lies and manipulation tear that apart. In the days that followed, Alex and I began talking more openly about what had happened. He admitted that he had been so consumed by his love for Sara, so focused on their future, that he hadn't fully understood what was at stake. "I wanted to believe in her," he said, "but I can see now that I was blind to what was really going on." I understood. Love makes people do foolish things. It blinds you to the truth, and it makes you believe things that aren't real. But that wasn't the end of Alex's story. He had learned, and he was growing. It wasn't easy for him to admit how deeply he'd been manipulated, but he was finally accepting responsibility for his part in all of this. It wasn't just Alex who had to heal. I did, too. For so long, I had been afraid to stand up for myself, afraid of losing my family, of being alone. But I had learned that standing up for what's right, even if it costs you everything, is the only way to protect what you truly love. The watch, the memories of Tom, had always been my anchor. But the real anchor was my family, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. One night, Alex came to me, his face serious. "Mom, I've been thinking. I want to end things with Sara." I could feel my heart skip a beat. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation, but I had known it was coming. Alex had always been a kind and compassionate person, and I had hoped that, in time, he would see the truth about Sara, that she wasn't the person he thought she was. "I think I've been holding on to something that wasn't real," he continued, looking down at the table. "I've been trying to force something that wasn't working. I love her, but I love you more. I don't want to keep living in a lie. I need to focus on what's important." It was hard for me to hear those words, harder than I expected. I could feel the weight of his decision, but I also felt a sense of pride in him. He was standing up for what he needed, for his own well-being, and for the family that had always supported him. I hugged him tightly. "You're doing the right thing, Alex. You always have." And as I held him, I realized something. My son wasn't lost. He hadn't been taken from me, not truly. He had been caught in a web of lies, but he had found his way back. And in that moment, I knew we would rebuild our family, not just from the outside in, but from the inside out. The next week, Alex made the call to Sara. I wasn't there to hear the conversation, but I didn't need to be. I could tell by the way he looked when he hung up that it was done. Sara's grip on him had loosened, and she was no longer a part of our story. The weight of her influence had finally been lifted. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The watch, which had once felt like an anchor, now felt like a relic of the past. It was still precious to me, still a symbol of Tom and everything we had shared, but I knew now that I didn't need it to hold onto those memories. My family, my son, were the true treasures. And while I would never forget what had happened, I knew that I had done the right thing for myself, for Alex, and for the legacy that Tom and I had built together. As the weeks passed, I focused on moving forward. Alex and I spent more time together, rebuilding our relationship one step at a time. We made new memories, ones that were free from the shadow of Sara's manipulation. And as we did, I realized something important. Sometimes, the things that are worth the most aren't the things you can hold in your hand. They're the people you love, and the people who love you back. I had fought for my son. I had fought for my family. And in the end, we emerged stronger. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that happened, I can't help but feel a sense of peace. The storm that had raged through my family, the manipulation, the lies, the betrayal, has passed. And while the scars remain, I've learned something invaluable through it all. Sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones that show you what truly matters. When everything started, I thought it was about the watch. I thought it was about preserving a memory, holding on to something that symbolized the love Tom and I shared. And in a way, it was. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, I came to understand that the watch was never the most important thing. What mattered, what I needed to protect, was the bond one had with my son. Family isn't just about the things we accumulate or the objects we inherit. It's about the relationships we build, the love we share, and the loyalty we stand by. I spent so much of my life focusing on what I thought was valuable, but in the end, what I was fighting for wasn't a watch. It was Alex. It was the future we would create together, free from manipulation, free from lies. And I'm proud of him, for seeing the truth, for standing up and choosing to break free. I know it wasn't easy. Love can make you do strange things, and when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see clearly. But Alex did, eventually. He saw that there was more to life than just pleasing someone else, more than just trying to make someone else happy at the expense of his own happiness. I had to learn to trust again, not just in Alex, but in myself. The guilt, the fear of losing him, had clouded my judgment for a while. I doubted myself. I doubted my choices. But I now know that standing my ground, doing what was right even when it was hard, was the only way to protect the ones I love. I had to let go of my own fear of being alone, of being rejected, and trust that doing the right thing would eventually lead us back to each other. I'll never forget the day Alex walked through that door, tears in his eyes, apologizing, admitting how wrong he had been. And I won't forget the look on his face when he finally saw Sara for who she really was. The truth had been hiding in plain sight, and once he saw it, once he understood what had been happening, everything clicked into place. As for Sara, well, I don't know what the future holds for her. Maybe she'll change, maybe she won't. But I've learned that there's nothing I can do to fix someone else's mistakes, and I can't keep fighting battles that aren't mine. My focus, from here on out, is on the people who truly matter. My son, my family, the people who support me and who I can trust. And that's enough. Now, when I look at the watch, I see a symbol of the past, of a love that was real and true, of a life that was built on sacrifice and understanding. But I also see it as a reminder of something else, the importance of standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. The watch will always have its place in my heart, but the real treasure is what I've learned. It's the strength to protect my family, the courage to do what's right, and the love that will always remain, even when everything else falls away. I may have lost a part of myself in this journey, but in the end, I found something far more valuable, a deeper connection to the ones I love and a clearer understanding of what really matters. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels. Sometimes, the hardest decisions lead to the greatest growth. In the end, it's not about the things we lose, but the strength we find when we stand up for what's truly important. The lesson here is simple: never let anyone, no matter how close they are, take away your sense of self, your memories, or your family. Stand up for what you believe in, and trust that the truth will always find its way to the surface.